What's going on, everybody? It's Dan Moonshine, the Hillbill Raiser. How you doing? I'm doing all right. Can't really complain too much. Besides the fact there, check this out. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I was at work the other day and I was moving some racks, some grid racks, and I must have I didn't realize it at the time, but I must have got my finger caught in between two of them. 'Cause I remember them shifting in my as I was moving them, but I didn't think too much of it. I didn't really feel anything, but I guess I jammed my finger up between them. So like a minute or two after I got done doing what I was doing, my hand started hurting. I was like, ah, gosh, damn, what's the hell's going on there? And it started getting all like my fingers started getting all tingly, which made me a little nervous because my neck issues and everything. So, but then I was looking, I saw it was all bruised up and everything, and I was like, oh, okay, well at least it's not that. But I ended up getting it checked out just to be safe, and it turned out it wasn't broken or anything like that. So I did some soft tissue damage and couldn't work out for a few days. At least I not work out like I like to, but I did a little light physical therapy type stuff. And then Saturday of this weekend, I went did a leg workout. I finally felt good enough. I've been icing the crap out of it, and it's finally to the point where it's not too bad. And honestly, them giving me a splint for my finger was probably the worst thing for it because I feel like it just stifled any sort of. They said it was for comfort and to use it as I felt necessary. And after a couple of days, it just wasn't necessary. If anything, it kind of was making things worse. It was just stationary and couldn't move it, and the splints didn't stay put anyhow. So it was a real waste of time. So just between icing it and rest and not really, trying to, use it or anything like that, I was just babying my hand. And yeah, so I'm feeling a little bit better. Gonna go try to work out tomorrow, do a proper upper body workout, and then go from there. But anyhow, uh, so I haven't done one of these JCW Lunacy reviews in a while. It's been the last one I did was episode 68. They are up to episode 75. I've been watching them. I just haven't taken the time to do any sort of videos on them, talk about any sort of progress, any sort of thoughts on the product as a whole. So that's pretty much what I'm going to do here today. I'm going to basically do a doing a abridged version of all the episodes that I've watched because you don't want to sit here and listen to me go through a detailed version of 6 episodes of pro wrestling, each of which are like probably like 2 hours long. So I just figured I would go through the general tenor of where I think the company, the product is going, how it's improved, deteriorated or stagnated under Vince Russo's creative direction. That is basically the entire reason why I've been watching JCW. My interest was piqued when he got involved because he has not done any writing gigs in the pro wrestling industry in decades. So I figured it'd be interesting. So I'll basically, as far as like my general overall opinion is that I've what I was fearing was going to happen is starting to happen a little bit. Like it's not, it hasn't improved enough to really keep my interest to a level. Like I'm going to give it a couple more, maybe 1 or 2 more weeks and see where all this is going. But for me, right now, if I were to balance it on a scale, the bad is definitely outweighing the good on this show. First of all, I'll start with the positives. Vito Lagrasso, Big Vito, he is still the best thing on this show. His his work and the disdain that he shows for juggalos is tremendous. He is a natural heat magnet in this environment. They're constantly throwing crap at him. I mean, they throw crap at some of the wrestlers anyhow, but with Vito, they're constantly throwing their drinks and their ice and cups and all this stuff at him. So he's doing a fantastic job. as the probably the one true heel there, next to probably I'd say Kerry Morton, who kind of interestingly enough, I guess he's doing a tour of Japan, so they wrote him off TV by saying that Vince Russo had him deported, which is kind of funny. But he's I guess overseas. He's getting some overseas experience, and yeah, good for him. He's a halfway decent wrestler talent. Kind of wish he'd lay off of all the pelvic thrusts and all that sort of stuff. I mean, you're not Elvis, and I don't know if you're going for a like ambiguously gay gimmick. I don't know what the deal is there, but it gets to be a bit too much for at least for my taste. But going back to Vito, his interactions with all the absurd that is JCW is great. I mean, for him coming from a pro professional wrestler background, a career professional wrestler, and now he's dealing with zombies and clowns, and he's got this friggin' Mickey Knuckles who, in her role, does a decent job. I mean, I really, I'm not a huge fan from what I've seen, uh, but she's decent at what she does. I'll give her credit. She does good in her role. Uh, I don't I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but I don't know her role is supposed her gimmick is that she's such a just a gross pig and she tries to seduce all the guys, and that kind of gives her the psychological advantage when she's in the ring doing all these intergender matches, because otherwise when she's in there with the women, she's like her intensity and the work that she does in the ring, at least bell to bell, is well above a lot of the women. She brings a different flavor to it, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, just Vito's interactions with all the insanity that is JCW is great. They had a whole thing where like he's now had PCO and Mickey Knuckles join his group, his organization, and I can't remember if somebody said they'd never really explained why they're part of it. You don't really have to. I mean, you don't have to really explain anything, but I mean, if you were to have to explain it, I would just say something like they work as some sort of affiliates, and like she's from Kentucky or something. And just say she did some like bouncing work for some associates at a club that they had an interest in, and PCO was like running cigarettes or something or other. Just do some dumb stuff like that as far as that goes. But yeah, he's the highlight of the show. Even on the most recent episode, he was cutting a promo and talking about how he's the ratings getter and he's the top box office guy. I would say that's probably the case, because he's been the best thing about the show by and large. They also, I would say, the Outbreak. They're still probably, as far as the tag teams go, I think they're probably the best ones on the roster. They've got bell to bell. They have fantastic ring work. The psychology behind what's a completely ridiculous gimmick is very good. It's very well done. They actually find a way to make it work. Every time I've seen them in every tag match that I've seen on the show thus far, every episode I've watched that they've been in has always been good. Where like my other favorite team is the Brothers of Construction, which I get into in a second. But I feel like they've had the most consistent tag matches with every opponent that they've had. So I have to believe that they're probably the guys that are kind of orchestrating everything, that or whoever's in the back giving them advice they're listening to. But by and large, I think they're probably the best tag team. I do enjoy the gimmick, as ridiculous as it is, but if go back, and not that I'm trying to coerce you into watching my crap, but my gimmick was fairly ridiculous in and of itself, even though it was a hillbilly thing and just some of the ridiculous crap that I did. So I'm not gonna poo poo on anybody for doing silly nonsense, because that was kind of my bread and butter for a little while, at least on the indies. Um, but yeah, so they're probably still one of the highlights of the show. They introduced a new female wrestler named J Rod. She's apparently from OVW. She's working on the new American Gladiators show that's on Amazon. Also, coincidentally, she's doing that with what's his name, Bugenhagen, Rick Bugenhagen, who he's a YouTube fitness. I hate the term, but influencer. He does videos on fitness videos. He's a weightlifter, power lifter. He ended up he's a bit of a metalhead, not like huge underground, but more like a Judas Priest kind of metalhead. That he's more like mainstream, traditional kind of heavy metal and hard rock and roll. And he's kind of an eccentric personality, and all that kind of led to him getting a job with WWE. And I feel like they completely dropped the ball on that guy, but that's another story for another time. One of the first videos I wanted to do out of the gate with my channel was I wanted to do this whole series where I kind of like recreated some of the gimmicks that I feel like WWE in particular dropped the ball on. And he's one of the ones that if anyone's interested in me doing that, just let me know. And I'll try to come up with something creative. But I personally, I had ideas for him that I thought would have worked that might have given him some personality that he could latch onto. And then the work could go from there. But anyhow, J Rod, she's got a good look, attractive, fit. She's a little on the green side. There's a few things that I've watched her do that I just go ugh. But by and large, I think that she stands out amongst the pack. Honestly, as far as the women's division that they have, I think they're probably uh, it's pretty solid. I mean, they got that Danny Moe, and they got J Rod and Alice Crowley, and they introduced another one, Sophia Rose, although she's kind of still on the green side. But I think by and large, the ones that they feature, they're very they're decent in the ring and not bad to look at. Which it's a cosmetic business, so you gotta you can't everybody can't work the Mickey Knuckles gimmick and be kind of gross and again not a very attractive woman. I don't think I'm telling tales out of school here. She's not going to win any Miss USA pageants, but that's kind of again that's part of her gimmick. And I would even go as far as to say yeah, she's doing great in her role. But that's probably where it ends as far as the positives I'm seeing. And then beyond that, I think there's a lot of negatives. Most of which revolve around either Russo's character specifically or just his creative decisions. As far as his character goes, him trying to babyface himself is a little like, what are you doing? I mean, they did the whole thing where he enacted this whole hostile takeover of the company, and now he's trying to rewrite it like, oh, well, I did this for the greater good, bro. This is for your own good. I needed to do this so we could get better, and we're doing better. And you can see the little improvements as far as viewership and stuff like that. It is going up. But I mean, I don't follow analytics and all that sort of crap, so I don't really follow it too heavily to let you know how good or bad or how much truth there is to that. There's certainly a little buzz being generated, but just the fact that his whole gimmick at the beginning was he enacted this hostile takeover of a company, and now he's trying to get everybody to be on his side, and they did this whole thing this past week. They had this whole kumbaya moment, which is leading to this whole, oh, they're gonna have a six-man tag match, and if this one wins, then this one is going to get 51% of the company, but if this one wins, then he not only doesn't get that, but he's going to give Big Vito 2% of the company, which means plus 2% plus the other guy's shares. So it's just going to turn into like the whole. It's almost kind of like all the McMahon family nonsense a little bit, but now instead of doing it like a family war, like that shows Succession or anything like that, now we're just doing it over corporate shares. So I don't know. I don't know where they're going to go with that. Uh, but lots of storytelling inconsistencies that I would say are going on with the show. They had one where weeks back, their main ref there, he took the mist from the zombies, which is supposed to kill you or incapacitate you permanently unless the Barnabas, the bizarre dude, gives you the antidote, which he never did with the ref. And then he was gone from the TV for weeks, and then he just appeared. And there was no explanation given. it was just like, okay, that never happened. And it's stuff like that. It's like, if you're not gonna, if you don't have a way to get yourself out of this silly horse shit, or at the very least you're not gonna, at least explain it. Try, don't just pretend like none of this happened, which is something that everybody in, TV does and whatnot. And I'm sure Russo would say, "Oh, bro, it's TV, it's entertainment. You don't have to explain everything. Some stuff just happens behind the scenes." It's like, yeah, but that was a pretty noticeable thing where you killed somebody on television and then brought them back like nothing happened. So I thought that was kind of stupid. And then in comparison to, they had Stephen Flo they did the same thing where he was in a tag match. Him and his partner Cocaine were in a tag match with the Outbreak. They did the mist gimmick. He fell to the outside, but his partner got him the antidote from the carnival barker, and he was revived almost instantly. So they still feel like, to some degree, there is a need for consistency in that aspect of the storytelling, but for some reason the referee didn't get it, which made no sense to me. There's too much hot shotting of matches. Like, you go from one week it's just a standard pro wrestling match to next week they're all in weapons and falls count anywhere with no real explanation other than maybe somebody used a foreign object or somebody cheated or something like that. I mean, it's just like, when I say hot shotting, if you're not familiar with the term, that's where you basically go from point A to point B without any in between. Like, usually you try to slow build certain things, and you can, for lack of a better way of describing it, you can milk how long you keep an angle going or how you keep a program going with a couple of wrestlers or a certain group of wrestlers. But there is none of that being had here. We go right from a singles match where somebody put their foot on the rope to now we're in a steel cage, and that's not something that actually happened, but it's kind of, the just hyperbolically, that's kind of the point I'm making. Uh, the hot potatoing of the tag belts is ridiculous. When you're constantly putting the belts from this one to that one to this one to that one, your belts have no meaning. There's no, you can't build any credible champion that is supposed to be like, you don't win belts in pro wrestling. It's not like a trophy that you won at a wrestling tournament. It's something that you're effectively awarded by the promoter. They see you as the standard bearer for the company. You're there to kind of promote the brand and do that sort of thing. And by you getting it, it's similar to getting a promotion at a job, is the best way to describe it. But they consider you, since it's television, they consider you somebody who they want to feature as a prominent member of the team, and they want you to represent the company. So when you're constantly putting the belt on different people every other week or every week, it's constantly changing hands. It doesn't mean anything. And I know probably with a guy like Russo, he doesn't think they mean anything anyway. They're just props, and which is kind of like his wild misunderstanding of the pro wrestling business. I think that's always been a flaw of his, and this is kind of a key example of it. I mean, they even did one where they took the belts off the clowns and put it on Too Tough Tony and Willie Mack. And because Vito got involved at the end, and it was kind of a screw finish where he cheated on their behalf, and they unwillingly won because of it, they just gave the belts back to the clowns. And it's like, there's nowhere in pro wrestling do you do that. It's just, it makes the head explode, some of the illogical thought patterns that go through his head when he's creating stuff. And it just, to him, it doesn't, none of it matters. So, and then speaking of, they brought back Violent J. He was supposed to have been gone from the company, and then Vito just brings him back because apparently he has all the power in the company. They did this whole thing with showrunners, and they get rid of both the showrunners. They fire Vampiro. They Alice Crowley decides she doesn't want to be showrunner because somebody who's the lie, cheat, and steal type of character all of a sudden has a come to Jesus moment after Vito yelling at her in the back one day, and decides she doesn't want to be bad anymore. She was just goofing when she was accusing Russo of assaulting her and coercing her and all this other stuff. It was just, I don't know, stuff like that just kind of makes me like, okay, I guess we didn't know where we were going with that one, so we just rode away we just took a detour and just said, oh, okay, this is how we'll just explain this away. It comes across like either it's the most creative thing in the world, you were like playing 5D chess, or you really didn't know where you were going with it, so you just had a backup. You said, okay, well, execute backup plan, which I'll explain, I think is kind of apparent in a second here. And then everyone seems to just book their own matches. Like there is there's no sense of there's somebody that is in the back like running a promotion. It's just everything is chaos and everybody just says, "Oh, I'm going to wrestle you tonight." And they're, "Okay, well, I guess we're having a match then." And you just stuff like that. But then probably the main thing, one of the biggest ones was the Brothers of Funstruction and this whole gimmick, this whole angle they're running where they're supposed to be, where Vito recognized them and thought they're from the neighborhood, and they were trying to like, oh no, no, that's not us. And then eventually it gets revealed that it was them, and they're mob. They were informants. They turned on the mob. They were in the mob, and then they snitched on them, and they were in witness protection. That's why they're dressed in clown makeup. So then they do a whole thing. They bring them out without the clown makeup. I guess probably another like Russo thing where he just wanted to see what they looked like without the clown makeup. And they come out and they cut a promo, and for the most part, fairly decent promo. Uh, they they look they have a decent look as far as that goes. Uh, Doing just like a basic, I guess like street thug gimmick, looking like somebody who belongs in Tony D'Angelo's group in NXT or something like that. But the crowd crapped all over it. They did not want to see any of that. So I almost feel like in the back they were talking amongst themselves and they said, well, if this bombs out there, we're going to go to option B, which is Violent J comes out, cuts his big, long kumbaya promo, everybody's family and blah, 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 blah. And we're all going to get together. And then out comes Vito. And then he kicks him in the balls or knees him in the balls and leaves him laying. And now the clowns are the clowns again. And we completely disregard the fact that we just established that these guys were in the witness protection program after snitching on the mob that they were a part of, and that there's guys all over all these tough guys are out there are looking for them, going to do them harm. They need to flee the city. But now we're just going to go back to wrestling. We're just going to go back to being the Brothers of Construction and having pro wrestling matches in this very small select radius of Michigan to here or there. It's like it just. I understand it's entertainment and it's television and none of it's real. I'm not a goofball. I understand all that, but it's just like, okay, so if any of this were true, the mob still wouldn't just come up and they wouldn't kill these guys or tune them up or anything like that. They would just go, oh, okay, it's fine. Vito got kneed in the balls. It's fine. We'll just let them. They snitched on us and possibly sent a bunch of us to jail. It's fine. No issues here. Just stuff like that just kind of makes me like, where if you didn't have like a legitimate plan for this, then where were you going with any of this? What was the point of any of this? You just wasted a bunch of time and then just said, no, it's fine. It's all, we're doing this now. And it's just, I don't know, stuff like that kind of makes me just go, okay, well, that was stupid and silly. And it's almost like you're just kind of like trying to advance the ball further down the field so you can continue to until you come up with the next crazy idea, and just none of it's consistent, none of it makes any sense. But anyhow, so let me look through my notes here. Yeah, the showrunner thing that just kind of faded away. I have to say, after watching a couple of weeks of him in the ring, can we please put Disco Ray back in the oven? Or can the guy talk? Can you just give him like a Piper's Pit segment? And because he does not belong in the ring. I think next to that Jeeves guy, he is probably the worst guy on the roster as far as in the ring. Watching him this past week, the coolest thing that happened was he was working with Mecha Wolf, and Mecha Wolf hit a suicide dive that put him through the wall at Harpo's. And then he did another one. They did something else, and they took out some fan in the front row because he bounced into the guardrail, Disco Ray that is, and the fan wasn't prepared for it, and she fell on her big ass. So that was kind of funny. Uh, but beyond that, he doesn't really. His work is terrible, and I don't really. I get he's like Disco Stew or whatever, and now he's got the ring rat. He's got the chick with the big ass with him, and he's shaking a tambourine against her ass, and it just none of it makes any sense. It just doesn't make sense. Uh, they're featuring that guy Facade a lot, the Neon Ninja. Uh, I don't know if the other guy is in Japan or whatever, the Ninja Mac guy, but he got screwed out of the title, and then he was there 1 week and wanting his rematch, and I don't know if he's someplace else or he's got engagements, he's got prior engagements, can't do the JCW stuff, but that's just kind of fallen to the wayside, at least temporarily. But he's good in the ring. He's decent in the ring, I should say, with all the flippy dippy stuff. But by and large, he's a fairly bland wrestler. Doesn't really. He's not a very good promo. I listened to him. They finally gave him some mic a backstage segment where he did some mic time and they're asking about all the cheating and everything, and he says, I'm not cheating, and then he goes and explains why he cheats because he's a juggalo and he'll do anything to survive. So he's like doing this whole tweener thing, which is it's just hot death. I mean, he's you're not going anywhere by it's either pull the plug or run with something, just do something with this guy, either make him full on babyface, juggalo, white meat babyface, or make him shit heel, win at all cost guy, and doesn't care about what anybody thinks about his motivations or how he operates or anything like that. Just stuff like that is kind of like that's kind of what drives me a little bit insane. They had a women's match this past week that again hot shotting from 1 week to the next. Now it's a weapons match, and ooh, the first thing that happened is it was the Sophia Rose. She had a chair up in the air that she was going to hit Danny Moe with, and Danny Moe hits the ring, and she just stands there frozen in time with the chair, to the point where Danny Moe had to duck under the chair that wasn't being swung at her as she stood there frozen, and then hits her and she drops the chair. It was brutal. It was just like, ugh, what the hell? Then there were Legos. They threw Legos on the ground and they were falling all over Legos, which that's got to suck ass. I never did that. I never would have, never will. Uh, then a couple of times J Rod, who's probably the strongest one in the match, she was laying in these weak chair shots. So laying in is kind of an oxymoron, but she was hitting these weak ass chair shots where it's like if you can't do it or if you can't or won't or unwilling or unable to do it, then don't do it. Just put the chair down. You either don't want to lay it into where it sounds legitimate or you can't because you just don't have it. Because there is as strong as she is, it's kind of surprising that she can't actually swing a chair with any legitimacy. But it just wasn't happening. So that it makes everything look fake. And that's one thing you don't want to do. Everybody knows what pro wrestling is, but at the same time, you don't want to make it look fake. You want to make it look as legitimate as possible. The greatest compliment you could ever get is when people say that, I know all that bullshit is fake, but that match was real right there, or something to that effect. Um, and then you'll have to bear with me for a quick second because I want to talk about this one thing here, but this wasn't part of this current week's episode, but I did want to talk about one more thing, and but I have an accompaniment. I have a treat, if you will, for you. Not much any of you will consider this a treat or not, but it was a couple weeks back. I was watching an episode of JCW, and it was Stephen Flo and Cocaine versus Too Tough Tony and Willie Mack. And Too Tough Tony has this gimmick where he has this move where he pours Bacardi all over his hand, lights it on fire, then punches somebody. He calls it the meteor. So he ends up they're doing this whole thing. They have this whole side thing that's completely irrelevant to what I'm about to say. But he's in the ring with Stephen Flo, and he hits him with the meteor. He pours the liquor all over his hand, lights it on fire, punches Stephen Flo, and you can clearly see his hair catches on fire temporarily. They put it out real quick. One of my coworkers, she thinks that this guy is great because she's young and she's in all the TikTok and all the meme stuff and that sort of thing. So she found him based on that. And she's into grunge, so she thinks it's hilarious that there's a grunge pro wrestler. So I was telling her about all this, but I gave her I offered a little musical accompaniment to a degree. Not so much musical, but an a cappella version of the Stephen Flo song to explain what happened to him. So give me a second here. I hope you people enjoy this. Oh, Steven, street got your hair caught on fire. Hmm. Oh, feeling like a headless chicken flambe. Huh? Oh, screaming. Maybe he should have wet his hair the day. Oh, it's kind of what I got there. I came up with a bunch of different alternate lyrics, but that was basically what I came up with off the top of my head. And I was laughing about it. I thought it was hilarious. I thought I was very witty to come up with that. It didn't quite fit the melody of the Pearl Jam song, and it kind of wasn't the greatest, but I thought it was funny. And like most things, if I think it's funny, I'll share it with people just because I'm an idiot, and that's kind of what I do. But yeah, man. So overall, I would have to say that I'm gonna give this one more chance, but if it doesn't drastically, oh, and there's one more thing before I say all that. I will say I'm gonna give this one more chance, but to see where it goes. But by and large, if it continues down this path, then I would have to say that it's just gonna become another bad wrestling show, and it's not gonna be worth watching or wasting any amount of time. And then there was one more match and that I saw this week, and they had Nick Nemeth on the show, brought him back, Dolph Ziggler, and they put him in a match with Mickey Knuckles. I do not know what the hell that was that I saw. I give him all the credit in the world because this guy he's the epitome of work a broomstick pro wrestler because they gave him this manure because he doesn't want to be in an intergender match and he doesn't want to do any he's probably doesn't want to do any of this stuff, but they're paying him. He probably enjoys all the people. He's probably a very nice guy, probably gets along with everybody, but he's such a pro that he legitimately came up with a match that they did absolutely nothing. They barely made any contact with each other, and the match was her trying to Mickey Knuckles trying to grope him. She's infatuated with him because she's obviously extremely hetero because she's constantly trying to accost all the gentlemen wrestlers that she thinks are attractive. Him being no exception. So she's trying to grope him the other time, grab his ass, grab his groin, all this stuff, and he's trying to avoid it and trying to avoid hitting her because he doesn't want to hit her. So this was the basic psychology of the match. And then eventually her big move that she gets in on him, besides she does a go behind on him and tries to grab his crotch, and he gets away. Then he does a go behind on her, and she rubs her butt up against his crotch, and he's skirting away and powders out and all that sort of thing. And then eventually she kisses him and they wind up on the ground and they wind up rolling around on the ground un- until he finally gets on top while they're still lip locked and he gets the pin based on that. It's just brilliant stuff. But all I could think was, what the hell was that? And then the only other thing I could think of was, well, Ziggler's probably thinking to himself, well, I've been with Amy Schumer, so what's one other gross pig for me? So it's kind of where I went with that one in my brain. But yeah, man. So that's what I thought. That's what I think of JCW. I have been watching it, but I just haven't been commenting on it or doing any videos or anything. But I figured for probably the 10 people that follow this and find what I do amusing or entertaining as far as recap and all this crazy wrestling nonsense. That's my recap on it. So again, I'll give it one more chance, but beyond that, well, I'll see because it's on a Thursday night, and I frankly I have better stuff to do on a Thursday night than sit here and watch a show that is becoming more illogical by the week. So I'll see. I'll see. I'll give it another chance, but after that, I might be tapping out of the JCW business because it's a little too indie, borderline backyardy for me. Uh, but if you want, I think there's a show called Revenge. Well, I know there's a show called Revenge of the Sis. I think they did an episode where they went to the Miami because they're based out of Florida. They went to the Miami Juggalo thing that was happening down there. So if you want, go check out their channel. I think they have some stuff that they did with the Juggalo gathering of the Juggalos down there. If you want to go check it out, they did some interviews and stuff like that. And I think the one guy, Royce, he's got a show called Daywave. He probably did more of it on there. If you want to go check that stuff out, for all of you that are the Juggalo people that want to go check out stuff that's more Juggalo centric, go check that stuff out. You might enjoy it if you haven't seen it already. But anyhow, that's what I got for you. This is Dan Moonshine. This has been Moonshine Talking. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. My recap of JCW over the past few weeks. And yeah, that's what I got for you. So everybody, take it easy. Stay sick, stay heavy, stay brutal. Always tuck your chin upon impact. Don't forget to breathe. Keep headbanging and iron slanging, and I will catch you on the next video. Later.